talk to him.
Yeah.
When I think of Bradford, of course, all I can think of is Jay Plyler.
Jay Plyler,
But
yeah.
he's in the wrong era. He came along a little after, as you know.
Yeah, that's right.
The other guy I was thinking of was down at Bradford was Gus Nelson.
Yeah.
Remember that name?
Oh, yeah. He raced even down at Speedway down in Warren.
Dickie Ben.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I would be surprised if he was alive.
Yeah.
Russ Thompson, your name keeps coming up over and over and over again from the beginning. So tell me how did you get a relationship with the guys, the Lloyd Williamses, the Leonard Briggs?
Well, you see, I grew up with those guys.
Okay.
And they were my close friends, being in a small town.
Right.
And they were the ones that were out around making noise, you know, like we ran around at night and stuff like that together, and we were in school together. And I was going to tell you the one thing you probably get a kick out of, the year I graduated from the high school in Sugar Grove, there was 10 of us. That was the whole class.
The whole class?
It was 10. And there was 7 girls and 3 boys. And Emery Mann was one of them.
No kidding.
Emery Mann was one of them. He was a year younger than I was, but he was smart, and he jumped a grade down in the 3rd grade, along in there somewhere. I think he skipped 2nd or 3rd grade. And so that's how. And Marv is actually my brother-in-law. And so we were a small town. We were all running around together. Emery Mann, running around with him all the time. And I guess that's pretty much what started the whole thing. But there was Leonard Briggs, and he had an older brother, Lloyd, but he didn't participate. He was kind of different. He was more the silent type and the business. He was all business, and he went and he started working in Erie and GE, and he kind of left the area. So, but Leonard was always around. Lloyd Williams came in later. He was actually from around Jamestown somewheres, and at the time when we started monkeying around in Sugar Grove. And Lloyd is the one that ran around all over the country trying to find land to build the racetrack. He ran around all over to do that. And so he was kind of he had that end of it. And then they got in Marv, and Marv got in on it, and then Don Frank got in on it. And they were looking, they gathered up a few guys that had a few bucks to see if they could get something started.
Did they talk to you at all, Russ, about joining that group of guys for Create State Line?
Well, at the time, I had my own garage and stuff, and I didn't really want to get mixed up in it because I didn't have the time, because I was working full-time as a mechanic for National Fuel Gas in Jamestown.
Right.
And I run the garage at night, and that was about took care of me.
Yeah.
And of course, I had a family started, and my wife always told me she didn't care how much I monkeyed with the race car as long as I didn't drive it. So we kind of had an agreement, and I was happy with that because I liked the end where you work on them. That was my thing anyway. So.
Let's go back somewhat to Skyline. You were part of that world up there, weren't you?
Oh yeah, we was up there, but not as much as I was at State Line. But what happened up there, they got this land from, they hooked up with a guy named Cliff Coons. Mm-hmm. And then he had the property up there. And so they decided to build a racetrack up there, and they probably didn't get all the clearances or something right, but the neighbors and stuff around there didn't go for it too much. They got the track built and they run it for a while, but then I don't know what happened with Cliff Coons. What happened? He kind of, I think there was kind of a rift there. Something showed up, and so they decided to give that one up and build State Line, and that's when Lloyd was covering the territory looking for something. Because I think that property that he bought, I think somebody in Erie owned it when he first got started. I know he was running up there too, unless I'm confused with the Erie's racetrack. I don't know, but I know he was up there a lot for that too.
Yeah, the property that they finally selected was owned by a lady in Brooklyn, New York.
Was it?
Yep. And so Lloyd and
Don.
Don, was it? They
Don.
went out, Don, and actually negotiated the purchase of it. Was there much talk in the Sugar Grove area as to why they selected that particular piece of property?
Yeah, they were just trying to get a place that didn't bother any of the neighbors. You know, they were trying to not stir up problems with the people around there, and there was not too much population up there.
Yeah, that's right.
So they kind of had, there was a couple of camps, I think, is about all that was up there, and they just got enough property to do the job, and that's what they finally ended up with.
Was there much buzz in the Sugar Grove area about this leaving Skyline up on one hill and basically going down the road a little bit to another hill, talking about?
No,
nothing?
you know, I never, if there was confrontation about that, I never got in on it.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know, it's a small town, but I didn't really hear anything negative or anything about it. But I knew there was some kind of a rift, but I didn't know what it was.
Right.
And I really didn't pursue it. I didn't really care. So,
Did Leonard or Jerry or Don talk to you at all, seek insight as to how this track might look physically?
no, those guys were, I mean, I kind of had all I could handle what I was doing, and I didn't go up there and help them lay out the racetrack, although I did go up and help them what I could, you know, because I remember I had a 51 Ford pickup, and they were putting the guardrails up at State Line, and I hooked the truck on to drag the cable because they couldn't pull it, and so I pulled the cable about 2/3 of the way around the track. I thought I was going to pull it all the way around, but it got hung up in the infield, so it wouldn't slide too good. But there was a lot of things going on at that time, and so
The five guys who were involved: Lloyd, Leonard, Marv, John, and Don, Jerry and Don. At some point, Marv sort of pulls up back from the ownership group and just becomes a driver type of thing. Do you know why that was?
well, at the time I remember there was something going on there that I didn't get in on, but Marv was running his gas station, and he had a wrecker, and he had about all he could handle because he was one of these guys that got up early in the morning, got that gas station open because everybody left Sugar Grove to work somewhere else. And so he was up early in order to get that going, and if there was a confrontation with the other guys, I didn't know about it, but I suppose there was some kind of a disagreement, but I never heard what it was, and I didn't really want to get into it anyway. He's my brother-in-law, and I didn't want to get mixed up in that. And it was, I don't know, it was more mutual agreement than anything, I think. He got out, and Don Frank came in. Jerry came in. Jerry came in then.
In the beginning, 1956 was the start of it, and where I'm looking at something called the track officials. The track manager was Leonard Briggs. The starter was Marv Thorpe. The scorers were Jim Ponder and Len Briggs. And then there were pit stewards, Skip Brown and Russ Thompson. What was your role there as pit steward?
Well, what happened, they were up in the the tower, or whatever you want to call it, and they would make the lineups. And then they would bring them down to the pit, and then we'd go around and tell them, you're out next, you're starting third, you're starting fourth.
Okay.
You know, you're fifth, or you're last this time, you went too fast last time.
Now, who actually made those decisions? Did Leonard make those decisions as to where everybody would be placed? Or?
Well, I'm not sure it was done up in the tower. It would be Lloyd Williams, or else Leonard probably had most control. Leonard he did it quietly, but he did do a lot of things. You know, but he wasn't one to stand out on the platform and preach to you. He just would make the rules and tell the guys what to do.
You were pit steward for the first couple of years. Were there certain drivers that would kind of disagree with how you were telling them where to be? I know you weren't the decision maker, but you were the messenger.
Yeah, well, there's always guys like that as far as that goes, but I don't remember of anybody really getting irate, you know. But they would say, well, how come he's starting first and how come I'm not, or something, one of these things like that. But I just tell them, I don't know, I didn't make it. Here it is on the paper.
Yeah. Read and weep. Did you also, as part of your role as pit steward, were you involved at all in the inspection process so that the cars, was there much of that at all?
No, there wasn't a lot of that at the beginning, like up there at State Line, but they used to check to make sure when they came in, they would more or less do that. Like one of the guys would be down at the gate where they came in, and he would look to make sure they all had their roll bars and their safety belts, and I don't even remember if you had to have a fire extinguisher then, but later on you had to have one trapped with a roll bar in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And things like that. Yeah, they always check that because I think the insurance companies probably made them do that.
Yeah, that's true.
So.
At the same time you were pit steward, when was the first time you really built a car which raced up at State Line?
That's one of them, yeah, but that's.
Thank you.
Marvin teed up on that car.
Yeah, but see, we had the coupes first.
Okay.
And these came on later. That's one of the coupes there, but that one came later too. We had
58.
we had a Ford coupe. Let's see, would be probably 51. 51. I'm trying to think the dates now.
Yeah.
I got to get caught up here. 56. You're talking State Line now.
Principally.
See, there were other tracks that run before that, and that's where I'm getting mixed up.
Any of that look familiar?
Yeah. Oh yeah. These were never run at State Line. That one never run at State Line. This one here was at Skyline. So that.
This one's Skyline too?
No, that was Dickie Bend. Way back then, Meadville, and those places used to be operating years ago.
Did State Line, I'm always kind of interested to know that State Line comes up in 1956, and there were other tracks around. I mean, there was a track right up, a few miles away in Skyline, which I think went till 1958. How did they draw drivers to State Line? What made them unique? Was it new track, money? What was it?
Probably new track for one thing, and probably I think the guys decided they had to pay a purse to make them come, so they probably upped the purse from other places just a little bit. The purse was never great at the beginning. They did pay well toward the end, but I mean, at the beginning it was just like any other place. They paid probably what they could, and they paid like a lot of them would pay a percentage of the gate of the take.
Right.
And when we first went there, when you got done racing, they paid you in cash right out through the window, you know,
Right.
and like that. But it was, as years go by, it kept getting more complicated. The business pick up, and I suppose the law got in there, and they made them build certain kinds of bathrooms and stuff up there. You know, this all came on later,
Yeah.
but it just gradually got bigger and bigger and bigger.
How did the economics of this work for you, Russ Thompson? I mean, you had so many cars and so many successes. Was it a hobby just for you, or could you actually earn $1 or $2 on this project?
Well, when it first started out, like Marv Thorpe and Leonard and I had car together.
Right.
And we didn't make any money, but we was having fun building them. And
Right.
I had the garage, and we'd get the stuff ready and that. And it was entertainment for us more than anything, because there was no money to really be made. And all we had to race with was junkyard parts.
Right.
And the only thing you ever got new maybe on it was a tire if somebody wanted to spend enough money. I remember, like, one friend of ours, Carl Johnson, that lived up in the country, he come down one day and he said, "Why don't you guys put some tires on it? Maybe it'd go somewhere." And so we said, "Well, maybe if we had the money, we would." He said, "Well, I'll buy you a couple of tires." So, you know, that's how everything had to operate then, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's when it started out. I found an old coupe, and Leonard, he come along and put some money in. Leonard was working in town, and he'd put a few bucks in, you know, and it just, that's how it all got going. But, and we lived in that little town there, and you know where the laundromat is in Sugar Grove? That was my garage. And right behind there, over on the road that you come 69,
Yeah,
it's right behind my old garage
yeah.
over there. Well, that was the Central's office, where they had the old telephones all hooked up, and one lady run all the lines, you know, and plugged in all the stuff. And she called over and say, "What's going on over that airplane factory?" we were making noise. And I knew her really well, because when I grew up as a kid, I peddled milk, and she'd come out on the porch, chase me off with a broom, you know, but not seriously, just fun. But that was getting way back. That's way back when, but that's where we started building the first cars, was there. And then in 1950 something, I moved down where I lived there on the Warren Road, and built that garage down there, and that's when I got into it more extensively, because I had a place to work, and I wasn't away from my family all the time.
Right.
And so that's what happened there. But you'll have to ask me some more questions, because
Oh, absolutely.
I can't remember what I'm.
Well, none of us can remember what the hell we did today.
I can't remember what to tell you unless you ask me.
No, well, we'll keep going. What we're going to do, just kind of walk in through a little bit of some of your cars and stuff that you built. 1950, one of the first ones at State Line that was a car you drove or prepared for Marv Thorpe. Was Marv your first driver?
Yeah.
And then Marv, how long did he drive one of your cars?
Marv drove. Let's see what we did. Let's see.
55 Chevy, like in 58.
Oh, I'm sorry, Russ, I went too far. Got you on the wrong page, I think. That one.
That one
You
there.
helped build that car?
I'll tell you what happened there. Frank Roman built cars for the racetrack. He built the Fabulous Four. Do you remember all that stuff?
Sure.
Well, okay, well, he built this car. And for some reason, they got into a rift up at State Line with Frank over something displeased him. And he parked the car, took the motor out of it, parked it. And I was down there one day, and I said, "What are you going to do with that?" And he said, "Oh, I'm going to sell it to you." And I said, "Okay." What do you want for it? So he told me. And this is the one I always called the prune because it had so many wrinkles in it. It was painted silver, and it had all them wrinkles. You know, we just get inside and beat it back out again because at that time there was nothing in there. That's all it was just a shell. And you could get right inside and beat them out. See, that's why that's so wrinkled like that. I always called it the prune. Well, I bought this car and put a motor in it, and we were running fair. Then it came time for I think it was a 50-lap mid-season race. I went over to Hallis Junkyard, and I said, "You got a Chevy V8, you'll sell me a motor?" And he said, "I got one," but he says, I don't know what's the matter with it. It misses, you know. And so I said, "Well, what do you want for it?" He said, "I'll take $100 for it." And I said, "No, not as long as I don't know what's the matter with it, you know." So he finally said 75 or 50, I can't remember exactly. So I bought it, took it home, and the distributor was cracked. The cap was cracked.
That's it?
So I had other engines that I had before, so I got the distributor out of one of them, put in it, and put it in for Marv for this 50-lapper. Never even took the exhaust pipes off from it. Stock exhaust were hanging on it yet. You know, I didn't have any headers or anything. Just stuck it in there and got it going. He won that 50-lapper.
Wow.
And I mean, he was running with some good machinery, but he was running steady.
I think this is a picture of, is that a picture of Marv winning that race that you're talking about? It looks like the right car, doesn't it, Tracy? Yeah, Tracy's saying that's the prune.
Yeah, that's the one. That's his wife and kids, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then we built this, which was kind of a mistake.
Which one's that, Russ?
The Chrysler.
The goldenrod.
Oh, the goldenrod.
Goldenrod. I could never make it go around a turn. It had torsion bars, and nobody had any experience with them. And we could never make the thing really do what we wanted it to. If you work on it and crank things around, then it'd want to tip over. It didn't want to go around the turn. It didn't want to tip. It just wouldn't turn. So I parked it out under the apple tree one time, and I said, "That's enough for me," you know. But had trouble with the engines too. What they would do, I couldn't keep the bearings in it when you turn them up because I had a good carburetor on it, and it would turn up a storm, but I couldn't keep it together because it was kind of something. And Squirt Johns at that time had Chrysler engines, and he was making things run, you know. And I told him, I said, I don't understand what's going on, because I said, I go to someplace and buy one, and I take it, and it's never been apart, and the crankshaft's turned down on some throws when it was brand new. Chrysler used to do that. They wasn't right. They just turn one throw down and on the crank and put it together and sell it for brand new. And I got into that once, and I just got discouraged because it was. And then the selection in the junkyard wasn't that good either. I mean, you couldn't find stuff readily, you know. And so I took that one there and made, I think that was a 59 or something, made a 60 out of it, you know, by chopping the fins off from it or something. And run it one more year, and then I parked it. I said, that's enough of that. So.
After Marv drove your car, who was the next driver that you got?
Johnny Whitehead.
Johnny Whitehead?
Yeah. That's him right there. That's when I started building the late models right there.
Those are Chevelles, Russ, is that right?
Yeah, that's a Chevelle, yeah.
Why did you get into that, Chevelle?
Well, when they came out with the Chevelle was a mid-sized car that wasn't heavy, and it was the right wheelbase for what they were asking for. I think it was 115-inch wheelbase or something like that. It had to be. They wouldn't let you get something too short, so that fit the bill. And what happened is I got this car from over at Twin Auto, and I brought it home and took it apart, and it had it was a sedan, and I made a two-door out of it.
Oh.
And you can only tell by right here in the corner where it comes down on the two-door. They came around like this, and that goes.
Oh.
That's the only way you could tell what's the difference. But I made a two-door out of it, so I wouldn't have to mess with them doors, them heavy doors.
Right.
Got rid of them. See.
I see.
And, yeah, and that.
Here's a car before you tore it apart, Russ.
Yep, that's it.
Is that the one that had 45 miles on it?
No. The one that had 45 miles on it was the next Chevelle. It was
Wow, that car was hurt.
By the way, how did one select a driver? How did you
well, that was I don't know. I got to be a friend of Johnny Whitehead, and he was a character, I'll tell you.
Mm-hmm.
But he could drive, and he just had the knack for it, And so I would talk to him and get him squared away a little bit, and he'd show up every time and everything and get the job done. So, and what I liked about him was he'd run the fence. He'd run out wide, just stand right in it and run it wide. And nobody wanted to run out there because it's too close to the fence. And it cost me a few times because he'd get tangled up in it. But I mean, he run good most of the time, and you could go to a different racetrack, and he seemed to adapt to it quicker than some people would. And him and Bobby Snars were good friends, and they both run good, And so that's one reason. And he was, I don't know, he just seemed easy to get along with, too.
You had some coupes before you built this car. Didn't you and Barry build some coupes?
Yep.
Now, who was driving those coupes that you built?
Well, let's see here. The coupes. Freddie Knapp drove one of them. And, huh?
Paul Wilson.
Paul Wilson?
Paul Wilson drove the other one, yeah. I had 38 and 39, the numbers were on them.
Why didn't you choose Wilson or Knapp to run your late model? You remember?
Yeah, Wilson, he sort of would like to party too much.
Oh, okay.
And he came to the track sometimes not in good shape, and that kind of soured me there. So I figured, no, can't do that. So, and then Knapp, he went and got into with Berglund Chevrolet, and they started setting him up with the car.
That's right.
And so he went that way, and then I got to be friends with Plyler, and
Oh.
Now, did Plyler then take Johnny's job, or is that what happened there?
yeah,
Yeah.
and he drove that 39 and finished out the year, and I had a big power plant in that. I had the 427 in it.
So this was during mid-year. Was there a reason for the change mid-year?
Well, yeah, he just got so he couldn't get the job done.
Okay, so you just
He just lost his finesse or something, and so I went with Plyler because he was a steadfast guy. He nice personality and everything, and so he was, the only thing with him, he was a neatnik. He wanted everything just, you know, and so when they came up to the house at one time, I said, would you like to drive my race car? And he went out, and his wife really didn't want him to, you know, because she said, I'm thinking you'd get hurt. Well, he said, well, come out here. So he took her out there, and he said, you see these roll bars? He said, look at them. How could you build anything more safe than that? You know, he kept explaining to her. And he said, it would be pretty hard for me to get hurt unless I do something dumb. and so he finally convinced her it was all right. Well, he started running pretty good. But I learned a lot from him, too, because he had some engineering technology that he was getting from a friend of his. And they had a buddy that worked in the Ford garage in Bradford, and he was smart. And he could do, engine-wise, he was really good because he built a 6-cylinder that would run with the V8s. Mm-hmm. And he had a knack of things. I learned from him, and they were learning from me because we were kind of changing expressions. And the thing that I remember that tickled me the most was when I was reading in a magazine one time, and they came out with a jack. It looked just like a bumper jack almost, only it hooked into the rim of the wheel, and you could jack it up, and it had a gauge on it that would tell you how much the corner of the car weighed. Okay. So I sat and got one. I didn't say anything to anybody, and it helped my car quite a lot, and we were winning a little bit, you know, and so Plyler, he came up and he had his coupe, so he brought it out and set it out front on the cement, and he was weighing that, you know. Well, we got away with this for a couple of months, and then Chuck Van Kilder went by one day, and he saw something going on. Of course, that spilled the beans, you know. So then everybody started buying the jacks. So it was, but that's the way the game was. I mean, we weren't really trying to hide anything. We just didn't throw the information out there that you didn't have to. But I mean, I've always did things to help other people too. I can remember when Tracy was running there, and his friend there, he throwed the front pulley off the engine, you know, and so he couldn't run. So I gave him a pulley to put on the engine right at the racetrack. He shoved it on there and got going and went out and beat Tracy. And somebody said, well, why did you do that? I said, well, he probably helped me someday. So.
Russ, a guy named Chuck Piazza drove your coupe a few times. What can you tell us about Chuck?
Well, the only reason that he did that was because at that time, I can't remember just exactly what happened, but I needed somebody. He just filled in. Oh. He said, I don't really want the job, but he said, I'll drive it for you temporarily. Okay. Because at that time, he was building his own car. Okay. And he didn't have it done yet. And so he drove it for a while, but not that long. Maybe 3 times would be all.
Okay.
And in fact, Squirt Johns even drove it for me once.
Drove your coupe?
Yeah. Yeah, he'd climb right in there and do it. He was a good friend of mine, too.
Yeah.
Squirt used to come to the races and with his late model, and he would race State Line, then he'd park it at my garage then he'd come back Sunday and went to Erie with it. So he didn't have to tow it all the way down and all the way back. And a sucker would come up there and he'd park it there, and he'd come the next Sunday before we went to State Line, he'd get the air cleaner out and clean it and shake it out and hook it up and head for Erie and beat us. I mean, things like that can hurt you, you know. We were working all week on our up there and does something like that. But it was good. We used to go down there and have dinner with him and race down there at the track, too. So
we're going to show you, we've been talking about some of the drivers of that early 10-year period, either one. And we're going to show you some photos of some of the drivers. And if you got any recollection about a story or something about those drivers at that time, we sure would love to hear it. So feel free to just comment on anybody that you're looking at them.
Well, I got a story about the one, but you better not put that down.
Those are the ones we want to hear.
Now,
Yes.
all right, if you tell us a story, we promise not to use it.
We'll edit. That's the one thing we edit a lot of stuff.
No, I was just Jughead Pierce there. He was a character.
In what way?
Oh, he'd throw tantrums. He had a 57 Chevy that he drove on the highway. He was up to the racetrack one day and he got in a fight with his girlfriend. He kicked the windows out of his car.
His own car.
His own car. I mean, stuff like that's wild, you know. He was an Indian, you know.
Yeah.
And he acted like it when he got a couple of beers. He got right loose. Yeah, let's see. There's a lot of guys here. I know most of them. This one here was Bud. Is that Finale? That one there? That ain't Bud Finale.
Bud Finale. You're right, Russ. Bud.
Yeah.
What do you remember about Bud Finale?
Not too much. He did race up there a little bit once in a while, but he more or less was hit and miss. Just once in a while he'd show up.
How about his brother Floyd? What do you remember about him?
All the time. Floyd, yeah. He raced all the time. He used to. Carl Tyler, remember him, don't know anything about him though. Kenny Johnson, Hudson man. Drove Hudson coupes all the time. And he was a good guy. I liked him very well. Don Bailey. There was a guy that showed up once in a while. He was a good race car driver, and he came in for special shows and stuff. And he run good. He run really good. We raced with him down in Clarion and down in there, but he was not up around this. Of course, Ron Blackmore, I knew him well. He ran for Frank Roman there for a long time. He run good. And there's Squirt Johns. I've been telling you about him.
Was he the guy to beat
Squirt Johns was the guy to beat, yeah.
day in and day out?
5'11". He was a hard man to beat. And when they had, I remember one time up there, they had a special show that came in, and he was the only one that could qualify fast enough to run with them. One of the cars. There might have been somebody else, but anyway, he ended up winning the race. And they disqualified him because he had an electric fuel pump. And the rest of them didn't have that. See? But they had to find something because he made them look bad.
What made him so good? He won more during that time period than anybody.
Well, when I used to talk to Squirt, the thing that always sticks in my mind is he always talked of his uncle. He had an uncle that was really smart, I guess. I think he was some kind of an engineer. I'm not sure just what, but he was the one that designed, like he had that Hudson 6, and he had a distributor on it out of a big Nash, and they had twin fire. You know, they had a cap on the distributor that big with 12 wires going into it. Well, he used every other one, but that's what he run for a distributor. And man, did that car run. And that guy did that. That uncle designed that. He changed that over to make that work. And what he did for Squirt, and I didn't find that out for a while, but he'd get in the book and he found chrome crankshaft, and he'd get him the chrome crankshaft and the rod assemblies and piston and tell him to put it together. Of course, and he put it together, and I suppose he was in on that too, but I mean, that's what we were running against, stuff you couldn't see. You know, because this guy was smart. I mean, and he apparently had the bucks to do it. So, Johnny McGinley. I remember him, and I don't know much about him though. Jim Patrick. I remember him really well. He ran in let's see. He was running when they first started up there. He was the only one, I think, running a Ford. And he was really, really running out front. And after a while, they discovered he was running, what do you call that stuff, that fluid? Anyway, he had a little tank up underneath the...
Nitrous oxide?
And then he was turning it on, and it about lift the front wheels off the ground.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, he was quite an engineer too. I
Wow.
mean, he had somebody behind him that knew what was going on, and he run good. I liked him. Nice guy though. Frank Liftner, yeah, I remember him.
Is Frank still alive, you know?
I think Frank's still alive. Yeah.
I don't think he's around here, but
No, he's in Florida.
okay.
Yeah. Mike Egan, I remember the name, but not that well. Bill Jackson. Joe Sonner, yes, I know him well.
What do you know about Joe?
Oh, I liked Joe. He was good. He ran for you guys.
For my dad, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Joe Sonner worked on the power lines. Yeah, good guy. I remember when he ran for Twin Auto. Yeah. Dean Layfield. Yeah, I remember him well too. Yeah. He used to stop by the garage once in a while when he would come up through, and his brother, one time up at Skyline Speedway, he was running, I think it was an older Ford, and he broke the front spindle. The wheel come off and went out through the boonies somewhere, and they rescued it and come back, and there he was sitting up there, and he said to me, I said to him, how are you going to get that thing home? Because it that way, I can't remember. I don't think he had a trailer. He was just towing it, you know. Yeah. And he said, well, I don't know. And I said, well, he said, can you weld it back together for me, the spindle, just so I can roll it enough to get it home? And I said, yeah, I can try that. So he brought it down, and I ground it down and welded a while, and ground it back down for him, got it fixed up, you know, got him going again. And come next week, and I said, you get a new spindle? He said, no, that works good. He never changed it. Oh, I couldn't believe it. But Layfields were like that, you know. And I remember Dean one time, we were running, in fact, Syracuse at the long track, you know, it's a mile track up there, and it's flat and all sand. And you just stand on it and run wide open all the way around. It was almost perfectly round. And we were up there, and before they started the race, he took both valve covers off, poured a quart of oil on each one because they weren't getting any oil. You know, and they were getting away with things like that. And I would never dream to even try it because it just don't work for me, you know. They did things like that you just couldn't believe, you know, and they were having fun though. But yeah. I'm trying to think, this guy's down south. Where's he at? The
Which guy's that?
car dealer that drove from Mobilia and that, remember? Oh. What's his name?
Dill? Tom Dill?
Tom Dill.
Is that who you're thinking of?
Yeah. Tom Dill. Is he on here?
Not on this one, but he's right here, Russ. I've got him in another. Oh, by God, he is on there. He's right in the middle on the top row.
Oh, okay. Now I can see the resemblance now. Tom Dill came to me when they were going to Syracuse, and he said, "You build me a car that would run 100 mile an hour," and he said, "I'll win that race for you." Because he could do it too. I mean, he could stand on it and just hang on, go, you know. But he said it's tough to do it because too many variables, you know. You get tire problems, you get somebody running into you or something. But he said if you can get one to run 100 mile an hour, he said, I'll win a race for you. And I think I would have liked to have done it, but I don't think it was a feasible thing to do. But he was like that though. He came to my garage one time when we were working in there, and he came down, and it was in the summertime, and both the bays were open. And all of a sudden I hear this roar, here comes a motorcycle. He spun it right around in the garage. Boy, we scattered.
In the garage?
In the garage. Oh, he was that way.
Another Dell story.
I mean, we were friends and like that, but he was crazy. He that's the way he lived, though. He was that way. But.
Any of your drivers have any incidents with Dill on the track over the time? That you can remember?
Nothing serious, no. I mean, not that I remember. No. At times, everybody gets bumped up against somebody and like that, you know. But it's usually an incident that don't last very long. It's just that somebody deliberately does something that's bad, but.
Let me just ask a question, Russ. I mean, being the car owner and developer of the car, and are you giving instructions to your drivers as they go out of the race to do or not to do?
I never was a driver.
Right.
That was my end of the deal. And I didn't do that because I didn't know if I was telling them the right thing or not.
Right.
I had suggestions of the maintenance of the car to take care of this or take care of that, but as far as telling them how to drive, no, I didn't do that.
So there wasn't any pre-race conversation that you had with...
Not really, because you can't really prepare for something because you don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's a free-for-all, actually.
I can't believe, Russ, you never told Tracy how to drive.
I didn't have to. He just did it.
We'll mic up Tracy here in a little bit and find out if that story's true.
Now, I might have told him some things, but I can't remember.
You did tell me that the first race I ever won was a 40-lap race. He told me how to win it. I remember asking him, how am I going to win this race? 'Cause I had to start 20th.
Yeah, but that's not telling you how to drive, really. That was just...
No, not how to drive, but he told me how to win it, and it worked. Because he said he told me the first 10 laps, just hang in there, pick a spot if you get one, but don't,
Be patient.
just stay there. Because it was a 40-lap race. And by lap 20, half the field was gone, and I only had to pass half the cars. And we come down to the end, and I was there. So.
A lot of it, the driver has to have patience. You gotta have it. If you don't have it, they can destroy a lot of stuff in a hurry if they don't use their head, you know. But
There's a few more guys, Russ. They're more modern day guys that maybe you would remember. Some of those guys.
In relation, I mean, this is all relative, modern. This
Modern
isn't you,
day.
buddy.
Yeah, this is only 40 years ago instead of 50.
Yeah.
I know all of them.
Got any good stories about any of them, Russ?
You need that light on over there? Or?
I don't, but do you want that? Does he need that light? Okay.
He looks like he sees fine.
Jim Scott came to me one time when Rollerball was running, and he said, I need a car to go up there, and I had an old Mercury, and I sold that to him, and he went up there. I never did know how he run because I was not, I I just didn't have the time to go up to Rolla Bowl at that time when I was working at the garage and everything, but I know he went up there and did quite well with it. And Jim, for me, one time we had what was that Chevy that I built with John's ass? What was the name of that thing? You remember that, Tracy?
That Nova?
Yeah, that Nova. I took a Nova, and it was
64 Nova, I think it was.
yeah, old Chevy, and I took just the body, and I put it on a '57 Chevy frame, so it would have, and I shortened the frame and fixed it, and then what I did, I took two plates and put ears on them, sticking up, and mounted the A-frames on it and put it under the Chevy frame. So I put a Chevelle front end under that because of the ball joints, and that way I got the big spindles on it.
There's that car right there, Russ.
That's the one, yeah.
Keep going with your story.
And Tom Bass was a guy that was, hanging around there, and he put some money in it, and they had we put a Chevy 6 in it with the I can't remember the name of the head. Sent away and got a head for it. Made more compression and had good valves and stuff in it, and put that in there, and we had
Drop that down so we can see your face.
we had a Buick rear end in it because it could get the right gears for it, and that way it had 5x5 wheels all the way around. So the wheel bolts were all the same. And that's why we changed the front spindles. I reamed out the spindles and put Oldsmobile spindles on to get the heavy spindles. And that was one of the things that I came up with, and everybody went for it. I did it, and then Frank Roman, he wanted to know how I did it, so I told him. And who helped me do that was there was an old engineer there in Sugar Grove, or not an engineer, a tool and die man. And he had a lot of things in his shop and that. And I was looking for a reamer that would taper the right size for the spindle. Well, he was monkeying with it for me, He had his mics out and he was looking for something. And you know what he came up with? He came up with a reamer that he had in his chest there. And you know what it was for? It was to ream the core out on a stopcock. You know what a stopcock is? A valve that you see on a gas line or something? The regular valve or a water valve. That was the right taper. You know how the center of it's tapered? Well, that was the right taper. And nobody else could figure out what the heck the taper was. And he figured it out, that guy. And he gave me that reamer. And what made me kind of discouraged one time, and then people got to borrowing the reamer from me, And I said, this don't belong to me, and I don't want you to mess it up, But I'm not the kind of guy that can say, no, you're not going to, So I lent it to Berglund Chevrolet. And you know what they did? It welded a socket on it. And that really made me feel bad. But so I went and talked to the guy, and he said, don't worry about it, Russ. He said, I don't really need it. It's nothing I ever want anymore anyway. So he said, don't worry. But it made me feel bad because he had no business doing that. It had just a square thing on it, and we were putting it in the vise and take the spindle and run it there. Well, he wanted to put the spindle in, but I'd take the drill to it, see? So that didn't help the reamer any either, They just, people are sometimes don't think, and they do what's fine for them, but it made me kind of unhappy. But it was, that's what happened. But anyway, I was going to tell you, getting back to Jim Scott.
Yeah.
We had this little car down there at Bradford, and we was going to run it in the class they have down there. They said it's not, can't run it there, you run the late model. Well, they wouldn't run that was the late model up here because it wasn't the right wheelbase or something. Down there, it was all right. So we put Jim Scott in it, and he went out and run to the late model, and he almost won it. Came in second.
That was a
Amongst all-
six-cylinder car,
that
right?
little 6-cylinder. Yeah. Then some guy from Bradford, he saw that car running down there. And the next year, John decided to, he didn't want to monkey with it anymore. And he came up and bought it. He put a V8 in it. And he was cleaning house down there.
Oh.
He was having fun with it. But he kept coming back. How'd you do this? How'd you do that? But he had a good time with it.
Russ, having built cars and inevitably had to recruit drivers for those cars, if you had the pick of all those guys under the list here, and you could just select any of those drivers, the 1 or 2 drivers for your cars, who would you pick? Who's that all-star driver during State Line Speedway during that time period who you'd like to say, gee, I would love to have had him be my driver?
I had one of the best ones. I had Jay Plyler.
Right.
He was not only smart, but he was a good driver.
Right.
And then probably would be Squirt Johns and Bobby Snars.
Right, right. Also, you kept mentioning about Frank Ruhlman, who had success early on with Heil Russell and Eddie Kisco and Ronnie Blackmer. What made his cars have success?
Because Frank was a really smart guy with automotive anything, and he was real good with the torch and electric. He could make anything. In fact, he's the one that designed that little 3-speed shifter that you put on the floor. He made that, He make that all. He made one for me, so he could make the shifter on the floor. No problem. He took a torch and cut the stuff out and made it. And one time I was having trouble when I had that Oldsmobile in that Chevy coupe. It would, when you would really get into some rough going or something, or hit something, the fuel pump would go down and hit the cross member. And there was no way that I could move it or do anything about it unless I cut a hole in the cross member or something. I didn't want to do that. So I went down there and talking to Frank, and I said, how can I keep that engine from twisting sideways? Oh, he said, you gotta have a way of doing that. He said, they ain't that bad. And I said, well, to give you an idea, within 5 minutes he showed me exactly what to do. He just went out and looked at it. He said, see them 2 bolts in the water pump? He said, take a piece of thin metal and cut it, and drill 2 holes in it, weld a rod on it, and thread the end of it, build a bracket up down here, put a nut on each side of it, and run it till you get it where you want it. And it'll stay there. He just knew what to do. Stuff like that. And when I was a kid in high school, I used to go down there nights and learn something from him. He'd say, get under there and take that oil pan off or something. Back there, they had them old Chevrolets that had Babbitt rods. There was no bearings. They were actually looked like solder melded into the thing, and that they called it Babbitt. And it just wore away, and then you take the caps off and file it down, put them back on, and they had dippers on each rod that picked the oil up so they'd get oil to the crankshaft, And back then, things were like that, and he was a Chevrolet man, and there was nothing he didn't know about a Chevrolet. He could fix things up. Couldn't believe.
At one point, Frank, who had all this success with Kisco, Russell, Blackmer, sort of quit up at State Line. Why was that?
There was some kind of a rift up there that I never did know exactly what it was.
Yeah.
He got really irate over something. And I don't know what it was, for sure. I never did really hear.
He never really got back into it, did he? Up at State Line, I don't think.
No, he sold me that car, and he stayed right out of it.
Yeah. Wow, I mean, that's cold turkey. What's interesting to me is, was there a lot of camaraderie among the car owners so that you would share information, or was some of it sort of, it's my secret, I don't want to necessarily give you my competitive edge?
Well, no, I don't know. I don't remember a lot of that going on. We always tried to help each other out what we could, because there's probably a lot of things I didn't know about that was going on as far as that goes, but that was that way. But what got me going was toward the end there, everything was getting commercial. And guys like me, and I think maybe that's what happened to Frank, they started bringing in chrome shock absorbers, and the guys were buying quick changer ends, and I think that's one reason that Frank bowed out, because the only thing Frank would ever do that, I don't know, maybe they got after him for that, he'd go buy like a brand new Corvette engine and stick in on them, and he could afford to do it where the rest of us couldn't do that, see. And he'd get a Corvette engine and stick right in it, and the rest of it, and then he would have that body so light that the wind would blow it away, he had it whittled, there's nothing, just a shell. And he was really slick at making stuff, and he kept everything really light. I can remember one time he had a guy from Youngsville driving his car, and he got him because he didn't weigh nothing. He was just a little skinny runt, And he was, when we were running down at Dickey Bend and that, he just
Isn't there a story about Joe Tomes and the 65?
We're going to stop, just like, don't answer that question.
why that was.
Yeah, go ahead, sure, that's your story.
Russ, what do you know about Joe Tomes?
That's what I was just saying. I remember hearing about it, but I don't remember exactly all about it. But I know Frank said if he can win a feature with that thing, I don't remember what he called it, but clunker or something, that he didn't want to race there anymore or something. Something along that line was part of it. I don't think that was all of the deal, but
Wasn't he complaining? I heard something that was so big he'd get it sideways in the corner, nobody could pass him.
yeah, it was a. Well, you had one like that too. He had
65 Mercury, that was a big car.
Yeah, and he had a 55 Ford. Tracy did, and that was a big car. It was long, but
Tracy, ask your dad a couple of questions that we haven't asked yet. We've tried to get everything that's meaningful, but I know we're missing stuff here.
well, I'll tell you, there's something else I wanted Tracy to do while he's here. I can't get down there, but I'd like for you to take these guys downstairs and show them that picture.
Yeah, we can do that after the interview's over, I guess.
Well, I thought maybe they might have some questions about what's down there.
You want to take a quick break then?
Sure.
Just turn it off a minute, we'll go take a look.
Yeah,
And George goes from Brockway,
right.
and that's quite a trip all the time. That's why he'd drop his car off at my garage sometime and just leave it so he wouldn't have to tow it clear down there and back again.
He talked with a great deal of, I felt really good about what you did for him. He was really happy, that relationship. During this time period we were talking about, Dean Layfield was a force to be reckoned with, but he also died. What did that mean to the kind of racing community? Do you remember that conversation? Because here it is at the height of his career, he's killed.
What actually happened to him? Did they tell you?
Just that apparently a stone came through and went through his helmet, or it wasn't protected.
No, that wasn't him. That was Don Price that happened to.
Okay, all right. Well, what's your story?
Well, I didn't know what happened to Dean, really. I never did know.
Yeah.
I knew he got killed racing, but I didn't know what. But Don Price was a friend of mine. He was kind of he didn't race that long, and he started out at State Line, when they started sticking the late model up there,
Right.
they, not a State Line, it's Skyline. They run a late model up there part of a year or something, and he started driving a car up there, and then he had me, I built him a coupe, and he put that together, and he lived in Lottsville, and he was racing somewhere, I think in Cuba Lake maybe,
Right.
and a stone came through the front and got him in the temple.
Oh gosh.
That was the end of him. And that's the one I remember, but I never really did know what happened to Dean.
Among the racing community, what was the feeling? You remember? 1961.
Everybody was kind of in shock, but I mean, that probably was one of the first casualties that happened as far as directly related to racing, you know,
Right.
and so it probably did shake people up, but
I'm looking at that picture right in front of you, and it looks like a wreck. Does that make any sense to you? Why that picture's there? Is that I just wonder if that was a meaningful picture in one of your cars that got turned over.
no. I think that's probably at Skyline what it is, but
Do you ever find it during when you're in the pits and you're watching your driver out there, and all of a sudden somebody else would hit your car that you've just spent all week to prepare, and you may think it's intentional? Did you ever get kind of emotional and?
well, I know I must have at the time, yes.
Yeah.
You can't help but get excited if somebody does something like that, but then if your driver happened to do something to somebody else, you don't want to hear that either.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I can't control what my driver's doing,
Right.
and I mean, they had, like one time I had a car out there, and I can't remember what happened. Something come off of somebody's car and it went underneath mine. And then the next corner he came, didn't have any brakes, ripped the line off, and he hit somebody. And they were in that pit, and they were gonna do this and that until he found out we didn't have any brakes, and then it was all over.
Yeah,
I mean, but everything was happened like that. But there's usually a reason for it, and it all usually irons out after a while. But
Right. Did you find after the races, was there a place you guys went to for kind of a post-mortem?
no,
Was there a restaurant, a bar that?
no. Everybody was just tired out and scattered for home usually. But we were out in Ohio one time, and we were racing out there, and some of the old coupes, and the flagman stood on the racetrack. They didn't have a stand.
Yeah.
He stood on the inside of the racetrack flagging. Well, he was in there flagging, and two cars come out of the fourth turn, hooked together, and they came right at him.
Oh my gosh.
And just before they got there, they separated like that. And he was so happy to be alive. He come down and told us guy, he says, "I'll see you down at the bar." He says, "You can have anything you want."
Yeah, my gosh.
And I can remember getting a few drinks that night, but I mean, it was nothing. And then, of course, on the way home, we had fun because we were out in Albion, Ohio, and we were heading back. We got in Lottsville, right out here, and coming down that hill, and the doggone tow bar come unhooked.
Oh my gosh.
I was driving the car. They said, "You'll get us home, you drive." Well, I don't know if I was in better shape than the rest or not, but I was driving. Well, when it did that, I heard it conk and bang, so I just held on the brakes, and the tow bar went right up the trunk, took the license plate right off,
My gosh.
and it just stayed there. But I just stayed on the brake, and it stayed right there.
Oh, you're
But
lucky.
I was so happy. Went across the railroad tracks, and boy, it broke it loose.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, things like that. But we went through a lot of things. I took some bad rides sometimes, towing stuff, but
Yeah.
out in the field and back in again and stuff. But you had to be careful towing stuff because you couldn't stop.
When you know, here you are making the cars, building the cars, to test drive them. What, did you ever get out on the tracks and sort of do it yourself?
I never did. Never did. No. I think I tried it one time. Somebody told me it was missing or something. And I thought, well, I'll go see if I can figure it out. So I went out there. And it said, it's right at 5,500, it starts missing. Well, I couldn't get it up that far. So I couldn't help.
You really need to see this.
Okay.
Take a minute and go see it.
Your time period, and kind of why number one? You know why Marv Thorpe was number one?
Oh, I'll tell you that. That was Marv Thorpe, Len Briggs, and I.
Right.
Right?
Right.
You talking about the us three now?
Yeah.
Us three.
Let's do it there first. That's good. Okay.
So that's us three. But number one, let's see. Then we had Marv.
Ace of Spades. How'd the Ace of Spades come across?
That was, I don't know, it was just somebody's idea, and we had a young fellow that used to come around and paint that stuff, and I don't know if it was his idea or we were having trouble deciding on a number, so we did that because it wasn't actually a number. It is a number, but it's not, you know.
Well, then the next car was 220 with a lightning bolt through
Okay,
it. What was that about?
That was for Len Briggs, because we used to call him 220 Briggs, you know, because he was an electrician.
Oh, that was his nickname?
No, we just called him that once in a while because we couldn't think of something else, and so, you know, but that was what actually is behind it.
And then after that was 135 with Red Brown. How'd that number happen?
That and 35. I don't really know.
Something to do with the motor? Was it a 135 horse or something?
No, I don't think so. I don't really remember why that was.
I thought I remember something about a motor or an engine size or something.
39 was Johnny Whitehead's birthday. That's how old he was.
He was 39
Yeah.
when he started driving for you?
No, but it was something 39 with something to
Oh,
do
he
with
was
him.
born in 39?
Something to do with him.
Yeah, but
Huh?
you actually had 38 and 39. Those were a 38 Chevy and a 39 Chevy. I thought you told me once that's how you...
That was the Coops.
Yeah, the coupes, that's how the 39...
Yeah,
And then Johnny eventually got into the coupe.
yeah,
And was that his number from that was his number from then on.
yeah. He used to run a different number when he was running something for somebody else, but I can't remember what it was. But he always run 39 for me, and then we changed it to 79 when Tyler started running.
And Jay used 79 because that's what he was his number.
That was
on?
it. That was his number. Yeah.
Similarly with Stan Stevens before that was 45. Was that his number before?
That one I don't remember either. Why it was 45.
You've had a ton of success.
I did all right.
Did you ever stop to think how many races your cars won, Russ, over the years? Did anybody figure that out for you?
I never did figure it out.
Sounds like a good job for Tracy.
In conjunction with this guy right here. 'Cause if anybody has a handle on all the winners, he
Yeah,
does.
he's got the stats.
He's got the stats. Yeah, all you gotta do is match up the drivers with the stats. What are we missing, Russ? What are we missing, Tracy? What's the story that he should be asked?
We were talking downstairs about the, maybe could share with us about how Sugar Grove, as a small community, rallied around the track. Everything they did to support the track. Fire departments, people volunteering time. Anything you remember from that?
Well, the fire department used to do concessions for them and to help out, because they were always looking for volunteer firemen, and Marv, he was a fireman. I think he might have got them riled up on that a little bit when he was first at the track, and that I can remember. My son-in-law said he used to. I don't know if he was with the fire department or Boy Scout or something, but he was peeling potatoes so that they could take up to the racetrack, to do something rather. I don't know what they were doing with it.
The kids used to go up and peel potatoes for the fire department and make the fries so they could get in free to the track.
Oh. Yeah.
So guys like us could eat the fries.
But it didn't even guarantee you a ride to the track. You had to hitch a ride down at the Town and Country on the corner. When somebody went by with a race car, you piled in.
You remember the time, I don't know, Tracy, you remember that or not? Remember old Jim Frank that used to live around Sugar Grove? It would be Don's uncle, Don Frank's uncle. And he was always around there. And I came up there one time and I can't remember what it was. I had a car hooked behind my car and I needed somebody to get in and steer it. I wanted somebody in the back to steer the car. So I said, Jim, you get in there and steer that car for me towards the racetrack? Sure. He climbs in there. I get up to the racetrack, and I thought, boy, he's having a heck of a time making the turns, He kind of skidding around the turn a little bit. Got up there, and I said, Jim, what was the problem? He said, I never drove a car before. You hear the guy's probably 50 years old.
That's a good story.
Jeez. Did your friendship with Leonard and Jerry and Don and Lloyd, did your friendship with those guys ever interfere with your role as a car owner? Did you ever
No, I never.
get into a tough spot?
No, in fact, I used to help them out once in a while. When they would have a night of racing that was bad and they didn't have money to pay the purse, they'd call me and say, can we hold yours back for a while or something? And I'd say, oh, that's okay. So they'd get it to me later, But we kind of helped each other out what we could. And they always were good about, I had a 64 Chevelle, and I changed it, put all a tin on it to make it a 65, and they were paying a bonus if you built the current year car. In other words, if you won with it, you got an extra couple $100 or something, And so I did that, but they would always work with you that way, for that. But there was a few times when they had a few tough nights when it would rain them out or something, and things wouldn't go good, and things don't always work out the way you want them. And they do that, and
Russ, later on in your career, you got into the parts business. How did that all get started?
I was just telling him that while you were
I'm
downstairs.
sorry.
No, that's all right. We were just talking about that.
Has
while
it
you were
been on the
downstairs.
camera yet?
No.
Okay.
No.
What happened was we were running up the track there, and then like big outfits like Berglund Chevrolet got in it, and they started buying fancy stuff like chrome shocks and quick change rear ends and fancy wheels and stuff like this. See, well, what that did, that kind of put a bind on all the poor guys that were running around there, that were scraping things together. And so it was all right for a while. Like I went down south, took my truck and went down south, got a quick change rear end and a quick change steering box, that you couldn't run power steering, so you changed the gear in it to make it steer quicker. And so I got things like that, and I thought to myself that this is not going to stop here, And then the next year somebody else comes up with it, and then they come out with these aluminum heads with the fancy valves and stuff in it. Well, I didn't mind that. I got a pair of heads and started monkeying with that too, but then it got to where then they come out with aluminum radiators, and it just was never going to quit. Then they come out with all this fancy stuff, and then You had to have a fire suit. You had to have, the fancy helmet, the driving gloves, and the driving boots, and all this kind of stuff. And I told my wife, I said, I'm in the wrong end of this deal. So I said, things are going to have to change. So I went and put up a building. That's what I did first. I went to the credit union, got some money, and I built a nice pole barn and built myself a little warehouse stuff. And I started calling these companies to see if I could get hooked up with them, and I finally got hooked up with them. And then when they retired me out of the gas company, the next month after they retired me, was the last payment on my building. So it just ended up just about right. And so then I started investing in inventory.
I see.
And I got into it that way. And then I bought an old truck from what is these companies that have the moving vans and rent them out?
U-Haul.
U-Haul.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got one of them vehicles and put a trailer hitch on it and got myself a trailer and put tires on it. And I started doing things like that. Finally built that up, and that was pretty good business. I was just telling the guy here the other day, I was in there and I got a big kick out of the people that would come in to buy things because they wouldn't have any shoes on their kids, but they wanted to buy stuff for the race car. And it kind of made you feel bad, but I said to one guy, I said, "You sure you want to do it?" He said, "You don't take the money, I'll go somewhere else." And that's the way it goes. But I was telling the story the other day where this this young girl come in, nice looking young lady, she come in and she wanted to buy a fire suit for her boyfriend, which happened a lot. People come in there to buy presents and stuff, And she looked at them all over and she said what size she was looking at and everything. And she said to me, "This may sound funny, but," she said, "do you care if I try them on?" I said, "Why?" She said, "Well, if it fits me, it'll fit him." She said, "We're exactly the same size." And she says, "I wear his clothes all the time." So she said, "If I can wear it, it'll fit him perfect." She wanted, it was a Christmas present or something, I don't remember. But anyway, I mean, odd things like that you just don't forget,
Jeez.
Russ Thompson, this has been terrific. We can't thank you enough. This has been really a highlight. You've told us more things than we needed to know and filled in a lot of blanks. And
I probably told you things I shouldn't.
well, you get a sense it's on September 26th. September 26th. Mark it on your calendar. That'll be the world premiere of the State Line Speedway history, and you're going to be part of that. And if you wonder what kind of product it might look like, I see that DVD over there. That's what we did for Rollable. Randy's got it right there. Just to give you a sense. We are looking, and we continue to look for the movies. Any movies that you may have ever seen or heard about on State Line for the first few years. We're still in search of that. So if you know of anybody, or as you're talking about it, let us know. That's sort of a missing link here.
There was not too much of that stuff going on back there.
Why do you think so? Why do you think there weren't movies, Russ?
Well, I don't think people could afford to buy the camcorders and stuff like that carried around there. And at that time, they were so big and clumsy, the camcorders and stuff. Do you ever remember how big the first ones were that came out? And I just don't know of anybody that had them.
Well, we found, we got some on Rollable.
Yeah.
And we got some on, we've seen some from Skyline. So we know they're out there someplace. It's just a person who happens to have been in
Well, that was your dad that did Skyline, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you guys were in that. I don't know.
Yeah, we were in it. Yep.
And when the day is done, the other thing that'll happen, Randy Anderson has found more pictures of State Line Speedway and scanned them. He scans them, puts them into this database, and hopefully we'll have that part of the movie as well, so that everybody can at least see all the pictures that Gordon Mann took, among others. So it'll be part of the big documentary.
Yeah, they were asking me about Rop. He used to take pictures. you know.
Right.
And there was a lot of his pictures that I had that were from him because he I painted his name on the car and he used to give me pictures all the time.
He helped
And that's why Tracy had all those pictures, is because of
at
that.
one point.
Nope. Okay, sure. Well, then that makes it. Did you hear that, Randy?
I didn't. Sorry.
How these guys ended up with so much of Rop's pictures is because he put advertising on Russ's cars, and that's why these guys got it.
I think Tracy told me
Which
that
is-
story. Yeah, yeah.
It's neat.
George,
talking about that in a
George Rop, but I don't know where. I think he's probably passed away.
He has.
I didn't know if they're sure.
Yeah,
but
he passed away. I talked to his son. I think you gave me his phone number or something. And I talked to his son, and they didn't save anything. Unlike you, Russ, they threw everything away.
We're going to meet, hopefully next week, Mrs. Gordon Mann, whose, of course, husband took pictures. And we hope, she says she thinks she's got a lot of the pictures of State Line.
I know, he had a lot of pictures of my cars. I know that at one time, but I don't know if he gave them away or sold them or what. But
Well, we hopefully she's kept them all. And if so, then we get a chance to use them. But that's...
how about Len Briggs' wife? Didn't she keep anything?
I don't know. I've not talked to her. Randy, did you ever talk to...
I never talked to her directly. I've talked to Kathy Briggs.
Yeah.
Kathy Davies, and then she went and talked to her mom, and then I talked to Kurt Thorpe, who had talked to Craig, and Craig had talked to his mom, and basically Russ, Barb isn't interested in participating in this film.
Yeah.
She said that it's too hard for her to talk about Leonard. She
Yeah.
gets too upset. And she
I can
said-
believe it.
And she said, it's just too hard for me. So whether she has anything or not, I don't know.
Well, I know at one time they had a bunch of stuff in that garage up there on the corner, but they had a fire in there and they
Yeah.
throwed a bunch of stuff out, and because they were looking for something and they came down to my house looking for something that memorabilia, some kind they needed for something and like that. But my wife saved a lot of stuff, so.
And I believe Jerry lost some of his stuff in the flood.
He did. Jerry lost. Yeah, we've been to Jerry's house, and he has he's got a lot of stuff on Chubb, but he doesn't have anything on the racetrack anymore. I mean, it was all lost.
He lost all that.
He lost it all. Yeah. So the actual now Marv had a lot of programs that apparently Barry had saved and given to him. Because we said, Marv, where'd you get all these programs? He says, oh, my nephew.
Well, let me just...
So it's all the Thompsons that, saved it all.
Well, interestingly enough, and I know we've told you the story, Tracy, but we have programs from 1956 through 1962, complete. All those white programs that, small, with the picture on the front. And that came from Marv, complete set. Then from Bobby Schnars, a complete set from 1965 forward. Now, there's a 2-year gap, 63 and 64, which is what we're working on, where we have found nothing. Zero. And we've asked where all these people do, and they all have a little bit of something. Nobody has one program during that 2 years, which is a mystery to us. You figure either they didn't do it.
You didn't have one, any?
They're talking about the little white ones, a couple pictures.
Yeah.
And I don't have any of them really anymore. Remember you gave them away, you had them in a stack and people would take them from your store? And I think Keith still had them. We left them there. When Keith bought the place, we left them.
Anyways, you would think somebody, if they existed at all, somebody would have one or two, just enough to keep us interested. But there is just a complete gap of zero, which almost leads you to believe they didn't do anything. I can't believe it.
We asked Jerry, is there any reason you wouldn't have printed programs those 2 years? He goes, not that I know of.
So anyways, there's a mystery. There's certain mysteries in this whole game here, and that's one of them. We know we'll find at some point some more movies of this. But it's been a great thing, and so stay tuned. September 26th, down in Jamestown, Roadshow.
God, I'll be another year older there on the 29th,
Well, there you go.
29th of what?
September.
Oh, well then,
Birthday.
birthday cake
Birthday
at the
cake.
Jackson
Yeah, well,
Center
there
for
you go.
Russ.
No, don't do that.
All your cronies will be there.
Well, yeah, they'll all be coming back for this one. We've talked because we've interviewed all of them, and they've all been very interested to have one last sort of gathering. The movie would be the good excuse. We did the same thing with Rollerball 2 years ago. When we unveiled that movie, we had it at the Jackson Center in Jamestown, which has a 200-seat theater. The place was packed. And we brought back one of the old cars, Jalopies, Blinky Lidsinger's old car. He
Oh,
brought it up, and it was
That-
right on the front of the... So everybody came and had to
that
look
big
at...
Ford?
Yeah, yeah, it's about a 47, 48 Ford. Something.
No, they're earlier than that, I think.
Yeah, 42 to 48 is all kind of the same. I can't tell them apart.
Well, we had that, and so this time, interestingly enough,
Tracy doesn't even know this
yeah,
yet.
you'll appreciate this. They just recently had a 80th birthday party for Sammy Lamacuso in Jamestown. So Tom Dill and Jim Scott and others came back, and they had this big event. We did some interviews with the guys that were at this event, and it was determined at that time, on tape, that Sammy Lamacuso's last car, 27L, he still has. No engine, no transmission, but he's got the show. So a bunch of guys have all agreed they're going to throw in all their talents. They got an engine, they've got the transmission, they're going to pull it all together, and the car is going to be driven from the garage through Jamestown and find its way up to where we're going to show this thing. It'll be a hoot. It will be just such a hoot. And
What is it, a Charger?
Yeah,
About a 72.
2, 3, or 4, somewhere in there. You know, those
Yeah,
big
the
Chargers.
big ones.
so Sammy said, why not? A bunch of guys said they've already found all the
Yeah.
necessary items. And Sammy can still fit into his fire suit, and we'll have a police escort. It'll be a hoot.
So we told Sam we're going to have a police escort. He says it better be a fast car.
Yeah, that's funny. Isn't that funny?
Randy, is your dad still with us?
Yeah.
I haven't seen him so long, I didn't know.
God, I wish you guys lived closer together. He'd love to chat with you.
Where's he at?
Up in Lakewood?
How old is he?
Give me a minute, Russ. 83? 83. What are you, 81? 82.
83.
Oh, you're 83 too? Same as Dad?
Yep.
You're 83? No, I'm always a year off. You're born in when? 27?
6.
26?
Yeah, that's the year my dad was born, 26.
When's his birthday?
November.
Yeah, that's close, isn't it?
Yeah, you're September now.
You're the old timer, yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't get around so good. His legs aren't so good.
That's why I'm sitting here. I can't get around either.
Yeah. But, you know, like you, his mind's still good, and he could still drive, but only during the daytime. My mother died this past year, and so my dad's getting over that, you know. Well, you know what that's like. It's a hard deal.
Yeah.
So he's struggling with that a little bit, but his mind is awfully good. Yeah. I told him we were coming down here today, and he said, "I'll say hello to Mr. Goodwrench."
My wife is in the house here. She's sleeping. She just had a new knee put in,
I heard.
and she's
We'll probably make
not
it
getting her.
much
No, it
noise.
don't matter.
Okay.
She probably won't hear you.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, have you seen this?
I think you got.
I made a copy of it.
All right.
That's from
63.
Let's see that.
See, they made posters, Greg.
They made
no
posters, but
programs.
not anything else.
They put
This
all
is the
their,
only thing there is at 60.
they put all their money into posters.
There's Finale.
There's Sammy right there.
There's Sammy.
60. That's like 62 Ford. 27 now.
Yeah. There's John Seeley. Let's read this here. Well, Russ.
Are you still? Did your dad still monkey with Fords and stuff, or is he? What's he doing?
Oh, he still drives. He's got a Ford truck and a Ford car.
What's he get for a truck?
A Ranger. Just a little truck.
Who's still alive.
I don't know why a guy needs
Freddie
two
Knapp was in
vehicles.
that. Everybody
Well,
drove that car.
It's a guy thing, you
Well,
know.
he says the Ranger's an older truck, Russ. It's probably, I don't know, maybe 2001, 2002. His car's a lot newer, so
Randy,
He-
before
he-
we hey, hold up, Randy, before we leave, you got to have him take a look at those 3 pictures.
okay, I will.
You just-
So anyway.